Councilmember Lara.
Here.
Councilmember Lutz.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Here.
Mayor Elias.
Here.
All present.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem, can you do the invocation, please?
Sure.
Okay.
Please stand. God, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Fill us with your grace, Lord God, as we make decisions that might affect the community of Pico Rivera, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish is for the pursuit of truth, for greater glory of you, and for the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Everyone, please face the flag, place your right hand over your heart, and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. City Manager, are there any changes to the agenda?
None at this time, Mayor.
So we get into our study session. Would you start it off?
Yes, Mayor, City Council, good afternoon. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our Director, Pamela Ugar. It will be a joint presentation with her and her staff.
Great. Honorable Mayor and City Council, I'd like to introduce to you Kylie Torres, our Senior Management Analyst from Parks and Recreation, and she will be presenting the golf course item today, but I will be here in the background to help her as well, and so will our Director Angelina, Director of Finance.
Hello and welcome, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I wanted to thank you for joining us early here today as we provide you information about the golf course operations so that you may make a more informed decision moving forward. As you may be aware, the golf course will be experiencing a partial closure of holes 5, 6, 7, 8 on the driving range this September. This is due to the Whittier Narrows Dam Safety Modification Project. And this will continue on and through October 2022, at which time they will be completely closing the golf course with the exception of the banquet and parking facilities. The current vendor's contract does expire at the end of this month, and based on the decision that's made here today, we will either be extending that contract on a month-to-month basis or ceasing it. The project is due to be complete in 2027, at which time the city may renegotiate the lease of what land is available. The Pico Rivera Golf Course land was leased from the United States Army Corps of Engineers in 1965. Over the next 3 years, it was built into the 9-hole golf course that we currently see today. Over the decades, there have been several different operating models that the city has gone through to try to help revenues and boost play at the golf course. And however, it continued to experience about a $200,000 deficit per year. In 2011, this deficit reached about $2.46 million, at which time the city did about a $3 million transfer in from the general fund. At this time, the city also contracted out all operating services of the golf course to a vendor by the name of Golf Links. That agreement was terminated in 2018, and the new vendor, S&S Labarge, was brought on board. As you can see, beginning in 2011, there was that influx of money from the general fund, and that was the last year that we had seen an operating surplus, except for what is projected in this coming year. So at the end of this fiscal year, we are projecting a surplus of about $195,000 that will help us chip away at some of those deficits that we had seen in previous years. Golf play today is very strong. This is in large part due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We have seen a 68% increase in play from fiscal year 2018 and 19, and we brought a lot of new players to the game, as this was the only recreational sport available for people to partake in during the closures and the many shutdowns. These new players continue to stay with us. Even as other sports and fields have opened, the play remains strong, and to date, we're seeing about 6,000 people visit our course every month. Of those, about 25% are Pico Rivera residents, and a smaller but very good number, about 100 youth players, and that does not include our high school or SCGA youth players. And what does that mean? Well, we're seeing substantial revenues. We have about a monthly revenue of about $119,000, with the expenditures around $95,000, creating a nice little $23,000 per month surplus. We project that this will continue on as long as the golf course is fully operational. So at this time, we wanted to talk about, of course, what is going to happen during the partial closure and how that might affect operations. We presented City Council with 3 different scenarios of what we can do moving forward with the golf course, with scenario 1 being to cease all operations. This would include closure of the golf course, the land, the banquet facility, the parking lot. At this time, though it might seem like closing the golf course would save us money and be the right direction to go, we do know that with the United States Army Corps contract that we have signed, we are still on the hook to pay for maintenance of the golf course and provide security. We are very concerned about this, as the course was closed for a short 7-week period during COVID, and during that time, we saw a large increase of vandalism, people trying to set up camp on the golf grounds, and trespassing into residents' backyards who live along the golf course. We also know that this would create a loss for the community, a loss of a course for our youth to play on, and a loss of jobs. Currently, there are 25 people employed by our vendor at the golf course, 4 of which are Pico Rivera residents. If we move on to scenario number 2, this proposal would include shutting down the golf course for play, however, leaving the banquet and restaurant facility open for rental and use moving on to the future. This would also include minor maintenance of hole number 1, so that it would still encourage people to rent out that banquet facility, an area where they can take pictures for weddings and whatnot. With this option, we are projecting a small surplus on a month-to-month basis that will help continue to chip away at that fund balance deficit. Utilization of the banquet facility can continue on throughout the duration of the construction project, and having people there and having it being utilized and maintained to some degree also helps inhibit people from vandalizing the area and from feeling that they can just come onto the course and do what they like with it. And scenario number 3 would be to provide a shortened 5-hole course. We would rework some of the holes to provide this for the public, and it would continue to be utilized as a shortened course for practice play. The utilization of the banquet and the restaurant facility would also be maintained. And right now, we are projecting a potential deficit of up to $233,000. However, we might also have a surplus of up to $21,000. This is an unknown scenario, as there may be some potential losses if we have to reroute electrical and water lines. It will help us deter vagrancy on the course, and we can maintain the facility until October 2022, at which time it will be fully closed. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my director, Pamela Ugar, for some more comments.
So at this time, we were just interested.
Excuse me, let me ask a question of them.
I'm sorry.
You said that there was a Corps of Engineer contract that we had to, I have not seen that. And I haven't seen that there was a dollar amount in terms of the maintenance.
It was attached to the back of the staff report. The current lease now goes through September 7th and does require us to maintain the course and the security of the course.
It doesn't have a dollar. It says just maintain it.
And provide security, yes.
Okay. The other thing that I need to ask you, in 2016, the average cost of maintenance for an 18-hole golf course was between $700,000 and $1.3 million. The cost to maintain our 9-hole is $840,000. We have 1,500 yards in terms of the golf course. So that comes out to about $558 a yard in terms of maintenance. Don't you think that's high?
I'm not sure. I hadn't looked at the cost for the 18-hole golf courses, but the cost of expenditures for our golf courses do include staff to maintain the banquet, pay for food and beverage, and different expenditures. It's not just necessarily the maintenance costs that are going into that.
Now, the other thing too is, for the residents, do we have a discounted rate?
We currently do not have a discounted rate for the residents. However, we do have a discounted rate for our youth and our veteran population to come and access the golf course.
Because our rate is extraordinarily low.
It is, and that's what makes it an affordable option for patrons in our community to access and to provide access to a sport that is normally out of a lot of people's reach.
Any questions?
I have a couple questions. Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to just review scenarios 1, 2, and 3. So if we go with scenario 1, complete closure, we would be no longer paying out how much on an annual basis?
Well, we would actually continue to be paying out at least $200,000. We predict $265,000 for the first year and more like $300,000 for the years after. And this was mainly calculated on basic watering, which currently costs about $14,000 per month, but we're saying reduced numbers, maybe $8,000 per month. But the hefty charge there is the security. We would recommend having a security guard overnight, and that cost alone to have a security guard from a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift, 7 days a week, to keep vagrants and homeless, to keep our residents safe, we're approximating would be $98,000 for the year for one. This is a very large area, though, that abuts the riverbed on the dam on both sides. There are many holes in the fencing walls currently. There are 4 that we know of right now that we're trying to remediate, but they continue to cut the fencing, and so that would be a constant ongoing cost as well.
So after the lease term, where the city completes its lease with the Army Corps of Engineers in September of this year, the city is still obligated outside of a lease to maintain a property that is not owned by the city.
Correct. They are, in the past, no matter, I mean, it even says in the lease agreement now, and we foresee them, they are drafting another lease agreement for the future. Because we have leased this land traditionally in the past, we are still obligated to pay for the maintenance and security of the land, no matter what the city decides to do with said land.
Okay, so that if I understand this correctly, I want to be logical about this, and we're working in terms of contracts. The contract between the city and the landowner, which is Army Corps of Engineers, ends in September 2021. Ends in September 2021. And therefore, now, the city no longer is leasing the land, but yet is still obligated to take care of someone else's land.
I apologize. The original lease with the golf course, actually, the last time we signed it was for a period of 50 years, so that's actually through 2034. The lease that we signed just recently modifies that lease agreement to take away the partially closed areas as of September 7th. So those areas are no longer leased by the city, but the remaining land is still under the original lease.
So the remaining land is still under the lease, and the city still has an obligation to maintain that?
Correct.
Okay. I'd love to get a copy of that,
Yes, I will make sure we.
because that would change the scenario.
It was attached in the back of the staff report. It's an attachment that's included in the report.
Okay.
I have a question.
I'm not done yet. Because I wanted to go on scenario 2. So scenario 2 now is maintain the banquet hall. And the banquet hall would have a revenue generation that would make enough profit to supersede the maintenance cost?
We predict that yes, it would help offset those costs. Banquet revenue brings in quite a bit of money if the facility is utilized every night. And we do feel that would help offset the maintenance cost. And it would be a small surplus, but it would be something. We are predicting that, yes.
Okay, so there would be surplus scenario 2, maintaining the banquet hall. Going back to scenario 1, the full closure would still require maintenance on behalf of the city until 2026.
Until 2022, when there's the full closure of the golf course. And that's when they're definitely going to assume all of that land, except for the banquet facility and the parking lot.
Okay. And then now scenario 3 is to maintain a partial golf course open with a banquet hall. And now that would predict or project a profit or a loss annually.
Right now, scenario number 3, that one's a little bit tricky. We're trying to ourselves try to find out what that might mean. In the worst case scenarios, we are predicting a deficit. That would be, should a water line be damaged by the construction that's going on with the Whittier Narrows Dam, or should an electrical line be damaged and we have to, move those lines to continue to water the course, that could be costly to the city. However, if things go well, and the United States Army Corps of Engineers, we've met with them over this scenario, they believe they are not going to damage the lines and they are going to remain intact. We could possibly see a potential surplus. It would include, lowering some operating costs for the partial closures of the areas, increasing our banquet marketing, and taking some steps to try to avoid deficits at all costs.
And council member, if I'd like to add, the banquet is somewhat of a certainty. The 6 holes is somewhat of an uncertainty because we just don't know how that will be received by the public to golf on the remaining number of holes.
Got it. Okay, so that one's an uncertainty, but yet there's a good percentage of the public, non-resident and resident of the community, that would like as much of the golf course open, but that could be at a deficit. I understand, we would love to, but possibly a deficit. Do we want to take the city out of a deficit, or do we want to actually start saving money and correcting our ways? Now, going back to scenario 1, and I'll be done. Scenario one would be maintaining or modifying the management contract with LaBarge to do the maintenance. And that cost would be up until 2020.
In scenario 1, we would actually cease all operations with S&S LaBarge and most likely just provide basic maintenance operations with either internal staff or contracted out with a company that we use to, do median maintenance. We're, cutting the grass, making sure trees are trimmed and shrubs are maintained so it doesn't become a fire hazard, making sure that the lakes are maintained so that doesn't become an issue in the future. It would be very minimal. Again, a majority of those costs would come from water and the security to protect the facility and protect the residents that live along the golf course.
The lakes would be maintained so they look aesthetically pleasing, or they would be drained so prevent mosquitoes?
At this time, I believe we were going to maintain them. It does state in the initial United States Army Corps contract, which we will provide to you, that the water features were to be maintained as is.
Interesting. In a non-usable golf course, the lakes were to be maintained. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of questions as well. In about 4 years ago, I was a parks commissioner, and I recall that there was a bike stop that was created on the facility. Did they provide any data on bikers, residents and non-residents that stop at the location? I know it's a rest stop where they can check their bike, go to the restroom and things.
You know, I don't have current figures on that, besides the fact that I know those parking lots, if you go there early morning on Saturday or Sunday, are completely filled with cars from bikers that use that as a starting or an end point for regional locations. Some go all the way to the beach from here, and others go into the mountains and come back down. So it is widely used as a bike path, and we do get some revenue from bikers coming in and utilizing our restaurant and using it as that, meetup place and rest stop area.
Just real briefly, point of clarification on that. That
Wait, hold on.
I just wanted to add some info.
Well, she still has the, okay.
Fair enough.
Thank you. The other question that I have is that, so the budget is currently balanced, correct, though, for our based off of our proposed budget, our 2021, 2022, starting July 1st, if we were to even keep full operation open with the golf course, which would be option number 3, the city is not in deficit, correct?
The city as a whole is not in deficit, but this golf course fund, that is its own entity, is. So it's been running at deficits 20 years plus. Every year, revenues do not meet expenditure costs of maintaining the operations. So it's been running and increasing the deficit year over year, and that's why the general fund had to come in and infuse approximately $3 million in 2011 to be able to keep the golf course open.
Sure, but it wasn't intended as a revenue, it was intended as a park. Was that part of the attention, you think? And for instance, Smith Park Swimming Pool, I know we charged $1 swimming lessons. So the purpose wasn't to make a profit off of our residents or players, but to provide a park space.
So I think, because of the setup of the golf course as an enterprise fund, it was intended to be a fee-for-service. I think what makes this golf course unique and some other city-run golf courses is that they take on some of the park features, such as, it is a walking path. It does have some public, access component to it. Financially speaking, though, and just, as to run it like as a true government entity, it is an enterprise fund that is set up to run its own operations with no general fund, transfers in or no general fund subsidies per se.
Thank you.
Councilman Laura?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Point of clarification real fast. That bike rest stop was never opened. They constructed that whole thing, but at the end of it, it's never utilized. Were you done with your
I don't think
presentation?
that's true. I don't think that's a fact.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
oh.
no, no, no. No, it is true, because I was there yesterday.
Wait a minute.
Oh, wait.
Okay, you're going to have a chance to speak. We're not going to cross each other on this,
No,
okay?
that's fine.
Go ahead.
I was there yesterday, and we talked about the construction of the bike rest stop. And it was a great idea. They never utilized it, so they never opened up the gate to the bike path, because they determined that if they did that, it would increase vandalism and theft from the mechanic shop. Because when you're there, the wall to the mechanic shop is about 5 feet high. That's why they never opened the gate and they never utilized it.
That would be the case during the pandemic, but 4 years ago, that path was open.
Mr. Hernandez, could you?
Yeah, just so I was with Councilmember Laura yesterday, providing him a tour of the golf course. I was very actively involved with the San Gabriel Valley Conservation Corps, the San Gabriel Valley Bicycle Coalition, the LA County Parks and Recs Department, and the LA County Public Works Department when it was built by the San Gabriel Valley Conservation Corps. It was actually open for just a short period of time until they determined that it was causing more of a problem than a solution it was designed to solve.
Mr. City Manager, is that relevant to the presentation that we have right now?
No.
It was just a question that was answered, but again, he just answered the question from the council member.
It was just a tangent. I was just trying to provide some clarity. Are you done, Director Ugar? It seemed like they were going to hand it off to you and you were going to have some comments. I'd like to have them finish the presentation and then I have my comments afterwards.
We were just going to open it up for questions, but I wanted to make one point about scenario 2 to scenario 3, just so that you're aware. Right now, we provided you 1, 2, and 3, but if we really can't get there because we're not sure of the damage yet of what's going to happen when the Corps comes in. But ultimately, if we could make a recommendation, would it be some kind of hybrid between 2 and 3? You know, some kind of blending in there, because one thing that needs to be noticed is that right now the banquet hall and the concession area is open like 6 a.m. to about 9 or 10. They're doing great. But if we go with scenario 2, just straight off the bat, he's going to have to change his hours because there will not be any golfing. So there's not going to be any real need for him and traffic to open up at 6 a.m. Even with the bikers, he still probably would just be a lunchtime facility and maybe a happy hour facility. So that's one thing I wanted you to note between 2 and 3. If we go with scenario 3, he'll stay open the majority of the hours. He will not have to cease hours.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'd like to go into my comments. At this point in time, can I put up my slides that I prepared? I prepared some slides, at least there were a few slides, but I had a difficult time getting them over to email. I walked the golf course the other day with Mr. Hernandez, and I want to thank you very much, Mr. Hernandez. It was very informative. It was very educational. You've been the point person on this. Thank you. I feel that the city has done a poor job at informing our community on exactly what's going to happen at the golf course. I read through all the public comments. I sat in the clerk's office and I read through every single one of those public comments. And then a community member called me this afternoon, Mr. Johnny Garcia, and I heard comments from Mr. Josh Carrasco, people I respect in this community. And Mr. Garcia, Johnny, he said, hey, I want to talk to you. I said, well, let's get together for lunch. So him and I, we broke bread today. And he sat down and he had his presentation filled out. He'd be here tonight if we allowed public comment, and he gave his presentation. And he talked about the history of the golf course. He talked about what it meant for him, what it means to this community, what it means to our veteran organizations, what it means to our seniors, the fundraising opportunities that exist as a result of the golf course for our youth sports. Right? This is where people fundraise for our law enforcement, for our veterans. This has been a staple for Pico Rivera for decades. I listened to him, and he asked me, don't close the golf course. And I told him, I'm not closing the golf course. I don't have an intention of closing the golf course. The Army Corps of Engineers are the ones who are closing the golf course. And then I showed him this slide. That which is in black is what will be taken away from us September 2021, in a few months. We are never getting that land back. We are never getting that land back because they are widening and they are increasing the size of that dam. Period. That's holes 5, 6, 7, and 8. And they're taking out the back wall, the back fence of the driving range. And we talked about the possibility of maybe still utilizing the driving range. We'd have to rebuild the fence ourselves. But we are losing that land forever. Okay? In October of 2022, we are losing everything in yellow, all the way up to the banquet hall in the small corner. The only items that will be left for us in October 2022 is the banquet hall and the parking lot. So therefore, the scenarios that are presented before us, I'm not going to, if we shut everything down, we lose money. If we operate it, we most likely lose money, right? Because that's been the path of the operations of this golf course since at least 10 years. Next slide, please. About a month ago, I asked for the 10-year financials of the golf course.
Councilman, where are you taking this?
I'm taking it to, not only are we losing land, I'm trying to show the public, because the public's watching, what we're losing, and that this land is being taken from us, from the Army Corps of Engineers. If we choose to continue to operate this land, we're going to do it at a deficit, right? We have three scenarios to pick. My concern is over what the potential financial malfeasance, the mismanagement that has taken place over the past decade. I'll stop.
I'm going to ask you to hold on. Are you proposing another scenario?
What I'm proposing that we do is that we engage the public more. We listen to the public.
Okay, are we through with the presentation, that we could have this kind of discussion, or?
Yeah, we're
Is it
open
out
to
of
discussion
context?
or questions, Mayor.
May I make one more comment, though? I do, in the past, we have had operations that have led to a deficit. But again, I do want to point out that the new vendor has increased play, and that we are currently, this year, operating in an operating surplus. And we are, we would like to, for the next several months, continue to chip away at that deficit.
Yeah, no, what is, the current deficit right now is $2.3 million in that enterprise fund. You don't have enough time to go back to zero. I get it that they're pulling a small surplus, but at the end of the day, we have a $2.3 million deficit, of which, I'm going to stop.
Councilman Camacho?
Yeah, just some comments. I know we've been talking about this for some time. I know the bike path came about, and although it has very little relevance, I probably was the only one there, and so I know a little bit more on the value and how long it lasted and the reason why it got closed. But nevertheless, the utilization of that stop is still being utilized. They have another entrance, and the closure was done because of the theft of the equipment to fix the bikes that was placed there, and they came and saw that thing off. But nevertheless, I think, as was stated before in the presentation, knowing the numbers of participants here, Pico Rivera residents, the many folks that have provided their own experiences, and to see that, the high school, the both boys and girls golf team play there, and the youth, it was called Youth on Course when it first started, and that was the youth program that my kids participated on. That was one of very few in the entire region. The cost has been mentioned as far as minimal cost, because it is a play that, want to make it affordable, and it's become no doubt an iconic place for not only residents, but the entire community in the region that utilize it, such as our residents. I've said this before, if we purely look at the golf course facility as a business enterprise, then it's very, it doesn't take us much to make a determination that as a business, we got our losses and we move on, right? And I think that is what's being proposed. We're looking at it from a dollar per dollar of value here. And at that, it has, and as it's mentioned, 20 years of deficits. I can tell you the changes that we've done over the years of trying to make those improvements. Personally, from what I gathered, speaking to folks, city managers way back when, those who actually were here during the time of the renovations, that basically it was never really looked at as a business, as a profitable business. It was always looked at as a recreational facility, a facility that most cities do not have. and we do, and put us in the map in so many ways because of the golf course. So again, if we look at purely from a business perspective, I mean, it's a no-brainer to me. It's a loss, let's close it. But if we're going to look at it from that lens, it's important we start looking at other things from that lens as well. And so I've always looked at the facility as a recreational facility, and I wanted to just provide a couple of examples of that and, to make some comparisons. I know that unlike the golf course enterprise funds, that based on how it's structured, we're able to see line items and determine its expenditures and revenues and keep track of this. We're able to, again, have this conversation. But if we look at all parks in our city, we don't have a line item, correct, Director Garcia?
No, we don't.
We have a parks budget, and that's it, and we invest, and we know where capital improvements are done. But we don't have a line item that dictates how much we, at the end of the day, subsidize the parks. And truly we should, because these are parks. These are public spaces. And the two examples I want to use is one, the pool. The pool is a good example for us to use and discuss. We've been talking about the proposals to get grants, the ability to get it fully operational. And I don't know if, I do have some numbers here that were provided by staff from various reports, and it'll take pump up, to get the pump up and running, the cost would be $660,000. If we were to get the pool upgraded, energy efficient, and ADA compliant, we're looking at $10 million. And quite frankly, the pool was only, because we were talking about the only one that had actual revenues and expenditures, and it looks like from 16-17, we subsidized it by $65,000, 17-18, about $80,000, 18-19 by $115, and 19-20 by $108. So what I'm saying is that the pool, in essence, which my kids have participated in all the swimming programs, and I've sat there in the bleachers with other parents, seeing them and seeing the value of having a pool. And I've done that at the golf course too, and my kids participated in the courses. But I've seen that we're willing to have the conversation, discussion of the investment that we want to do for a pool, knowing that not every resident, not every child is going to utilize that pool. Why? Because it's a facility, it's a park, it's green space, it's activity, we use that. Most recently, we've been talking about the dog park. Councilmember Lutz and I have been working on providing a dog park. I think it's something that is needed in our community. And Director Ugar, just give us a quick estimate of some of the potential costs that we're looking at
For dog park?
for the dog park.
The smallest dog park that we are looking at that fits our city would be about $450,000. And then it would go up to 1.1 million.
And so, we're looking, Councilmember Lutz, looking at the viability, the, fiscal viability of creating a dog park, because we see that there's a need out there for dog, animal lovers, that we have many in our city, and we've had this conversation. And we're working on something that we're going to bring as a proposal to the body to determine whether we move forward or leave it alone. But nevertheless, it's a park, it's a amenity, it's a facility that not all residents will use, not all residents will take advantage of, but we're willing to have the conversation and make this investment. So what I'm saying, and as I use those examples, Mayor, thank you for the time, is to point out that if we purely look at the golf course as a money maker business operation, solely dollar for dollar, we have a whole different conversation, and we have to apply many other conversations to that. But if we look at it as another green space that some of our residents utilize, have grown up with, have, the kids, maybe they don't like football or baseball or softball, but they play golf. And the times I've been there, I've seen many residents, many of our veteran seniors that partake quite a lot. Lastly, Mayor, and I won't take up much time, is the major concern I have regarding the potential closure. And as Councilmember Lara illustrated in his presentation here, is that at the end of the day, the golf course will be closed with or without our approval. The question is, do we close it today and run a deficit? And as I was speaking to the residents in the area, run the risk of having security issues? 30 acres is a lot of land to maintain. I had some concerns. I talked to Congresswoman Sanchez about it some time ago. Her and I got on, and others got on a call, and the discussion of the security and maintaining the security, the reducing encampments, was almost like, we're going to tell the general contractor to make sure that dust mitigation is done, that security is provided, that there's no homeless encampments. We have projects here in the city today that we're dealing with those issues, and small projects, 30 acres to maintain and us to supervise, it's going to become, I think, some really major issues. So, I'm for the mindset of let's work, and I believe that this council is not about closing recreational or green space, especially knowing that the Whittier Dam Safety Improvement Project is going to reduce up to 40% of our green space in the city. This council is not about closing, or this council, I think, is about opening recreational facilities and opportunities. But if we look at it from a business perspective, it's an easy one. But if we look at it from the fact that we are providing recreational space, and eventually, inevitably, we're going to close it, but in the meantime, do we use and maintain and use something that is there today for our purposes and for to minimize the impact of security issues and homeless encampments? I think we need to really continue to look at it and look at the scenarios. Scenario 1, major concern. Scenario 2, open. Scenario 3, I think that it's still, as was stated, I think it needs to be looked at because we don't truly understand what the operation will be to determine whether we're going to subsidize it, worst case scenario, to the max, or potentially put us in the black. But that's how I see this conversation, this discussion, and I think that we should today be more concerned about keeping green space open, any green space, whether you like a dog park or swimming or golf course, but just keep it open and make sure that our security in our home don't get impacted. Thank you.
Councilman, I'm going to ask that you put it into an action, okay? Because again, the discussion is valid. Your discussions are valid. How can we put it into the agenda? Because right now, all it is a study session.
I think we need to, and I would concur with Councilmember Lara for us to dive in a little bit more on scenario 3. If it's a partial closure, partial use, but what does it that actually look like to make a decision?
Go ahead.
I agree with that in part. I think we need to take a close look at scenario 2 and 3. And we need to engage the public. We need to engage the public. The public, I think, needs to understand that this golf course is going to be taken from them. Like you mentioned, regardless of what we do, it's going to be taken from them in October of 2022. We don't know how much land we're going to get back. So I think we need to educate the public in terms of what is being taken from us. And I think we need to engage them, and we need to engage them with scenarios 2 and scenarios 3.
Maybe for me?
Member Tim?
I have a little insight on this as well. SS Labarge is the new vendor as of 2018. And we have to keep in mind that 2018, they did not have a license from the Public Health Department to cater food. So they weren't able to make a revenue. So then in their second year, 2019, 2020, that was when they got shut down due to COVID. So they weren't able to make money again. They haven't got a full chance to fully show and try to make revenue. And then now we're in 2021. So I feel we haven't given the vendor a full opportunity to show us that they can make a revenue. So rather than think about shutting this down, I think we should think about how we can make more revenue. Let's charge for parking for the bikers where they can validate at the grill. If they don't eat, then they have to pay the parking fee. And that could bring in more revenue. I know a lot of places charge for parking. I parked at Whittier Narrows. They were charging $7. That's the public parking. So if we really want to make some revenue, let's start thinking about ways we can use this even without the golf course, because bikers bike there, they don't golf. So I propose we look into charging for parking, and validating at the grill. That'll incentivize people to eat at the grill that's there, or just the bikers pay for using our parking lot. Secondly, I think that by giving the SS Labarge month-to-month contract, it stifles them. I work for the county. We need things done, planned 8 weeks in advance. So I know that the vendor, the event supervisor, he can't plan, for instance, Thanksgiving or Christmas banquets because they don't know their future. So if we stifle them and tell them, oh, we're going to shut you down next month, he can't plan ahead things 2 months out. So I propose we give them a year through June 30th, 2022, renew their contract 1 year, show us what you can do in 1 year, and give us your ideas. I spoke with Rudy as well. I visited the golf course, and some of his ideas included a paint night at the golf course on the patio. That doesn't include using the golf holes, whether the driving range is shut down or the green space is shut down, but the patio and banquet room could be used and charged for a paint night, a jazz night, doing things like that. That would help to generate revenue for the city. So I like his ideas. I also feel sad that if we shut down even the green space that's available, the last 6 spaces, that's the gardeners that are maintaining that space. We're still going to lose those jobs. So I think that I would propose option 3, but extend the contract 1 year, give them 1 more year to show us what they can do and help the city, help us to make revenue. Think of ways that we can bring revenue to that facility.
Councilman Lutz?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask a question. With the management company Labarge, what is the monthly payment or the annual payment to them?
Their contract is for $4,000 per month or $48,000 per year. That's what they keep. Everything else comes back to the city unless we show an overall operating surplus, which we don't feel like we're going to have anytime soon.
And do we have any other vendors besides them on a monthly cost? Because the cost to operate the golf course is approximately how much per month?
Right now, approximately $95,000 per month.
Okay.
And that's solely with them and the cost of utilities.
When I look at it as a perspective of a council member and looking to save money and maintaining a golf course open if it's realistic and viable, I'm looking to save money in every corner that we can. And if it means looking at different vendors and renegotiating contracts and opening out for the bid process, that's in my view, in the best interest of the community. They currently have a contract, Labarge, that ends at the end of the month. So I would like to propose that we open up for bids for other possible management companies, depending on what we decide as a council, what to keep open, what to close. Then we have a competitive bid process so that we actually look for cost-saving measures every possible way.
Councilman, okay, we have 5 minutes to end this session, okay, but hold on. There's discussion that is warranted. I need a motion so then we could put it, okay, and have this discussion.
I'll make a motion on the item that Councilmember Camacho and we discussed. I'd like to make the motion that we bring back as an action item to explore scenarios 2 and scenarios 3, and that we actively engage the public in terms of informing them what will take place at the golf course as a result of Army Corps.
And we'll incorporate,
Why don't we make that a separate motion, just so that it's clear for the clerk?
I'm sorry, if I can just add, I'd like Angelina sort of to speak to the budget item that's going to be before council this evening. And so what staff is really looking for with respect to direction is how the budget should be structured.
excuse me. All right, you're interfering right now in a situation right now. You just, let's have the motion and second it, and we
Mayor,
can move.
she's advising us. I would like to hear what she says. She's advising us on what we're.
One thing before the council goes any further, I just want to make sure it's in the record. We have 42 different public comments that's been distributed to the council. And as you evaluate, again, you're not making final decision tonight, but I think it's important for compliance with the Brown Act that we note that these have been put into the record, so.
And we're going to do that in the regular, are we?
No, actually tonight, because you're making a decision on the golf course, and all of these relate to the golf course.
Okay, and that's why I'm trying to avoid, okay? let's make a motion to discuss this and then get off of it?
I'm sorry, what are you
You wanna
trying to avoid?
clarify?
Point of clarification.
I w- I was just going to second the motion of Councilmember Lara, that I believe once we discuss items 2 with staff, the ideas that were presented by our colleagues will be incorporated into that overall feasibility of it and what did that determine.
Yeah.
So there's a first and a second on us to look at scenario 2 and
2 and 3, yeah.
Thank you.
And a point of clarification, don't we need to acknowledge these comments right now because of this conversation?
We just did.
Yes, the city clerk has received the public comments, and she's acknowledged that we have the number in 4 is 42. Is that correct? Yes. In support.
I'd like to use the last 2 minutes that we have just to, an enterprise is supposed to be, a plan where a service, is charged a fee there and we allow it and it becomes self-sustaining. Okay, so we have subsidized this from day one. I had an opportunity to take a look at the financial statements, or what you would call financial statements for the last 10 years, and I found some really serious problems, Again, how was that 2 million, what vehicle was used to transfer that money into the golf course?
So there was, all operating transfers require city council approval.
Right.
So in 2011, there was an infusion, a transfer in to the golf course from the general fund.
In the infusion, was it in the form of a loan?
No, it was not in the form of a loan. It was a transfer in. So transfer in is not repaid. Right now, the deficit is, one could say that it's an interfund loan between the general fund and the golf course fund. So that's what's keeping the golf course afloat. And so can I just add one more thing? So tonight, we are going to have the second public hearing for the budget adoption. And so right now, as it stands, the golf course and the budget for the golf course is essentially what is included in scenario 1. Now, the direction that you gave us will allow us to make those revisions and bring them back to you, even if you adopt the budget tonight. So the budget adoption does not lock in anything for the golf course. We could bring it back in June 22nd for a revision, or whenever we have more finite numbers.
So what you're saying is that the budget that we're voting on went with scenario 1.
I'm sorry, scenario 3. I apologize.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah,
scenario
that's
3.
what I thought.
We've moved around a little. I apologize.
Because
Yes, scenario 3.
that's what got this whole.
Yes.
Session is closed.
Mr. Mayor, we do have one closed session item to continue on with this meeting. Actually, more than one item, my apologies. We have items number A, B, and C, or letters A, B, and C on your agenda for tonight for closed session.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the record should reflect that the City Council recessed into closed session with all 5 members being present to discuss items A, B, and, says A, but A, B, and C. On these 3 items, the City Council received a briefing. On item A, which was conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, the City Council did authorize the approval of the proposed settlement agreement on this matter and authorized the city manager to sign the, let me make sure it was the city manager, authorized the,
That's right,
yes, the
Arnold.
city manager to execute the agreement as proposed. That was unanimous. On item B, conference with real property negotiators, the city council received a briefing on this matter. No direction was taken, no final action was taken, I should say. Direction was provided to the agency's negotiator. Item C, conference with labor negotiators. On that item, the city council provided direction to the agency's negotiators, but there was no final action taken. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report from closed session. It's appropriate to continue with the open portion of the meeting.
Yes, public hearing.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. At this time, this is item number 1, which is the public hearing for consideration of the adoption of fiscal year 2021-22 operating budget and 5-year capital improvement program. It's at this time appropriate to open the public hearing and receive a report.
At this time, I'd like to turn over to our Director of Finance.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight's public hearing culminates the budget preparation process that began close to 6 months ago. All right, I'm going to give it a second. Just to give you a reminder of just the steps that were undertaken to prepare this 2-year budget. This is the first year that we're going to be asking for authorization to appropriate the funds for fiscal year 2021-22. The city manager has directed us to prepare a 2-year budget. We've taken you through the year-end report, giving you the parameters that we undertook to prepare this budget. We brought you third quarter in the preliminary budget, 5-year capital plan, and now this is the second of the 2 public hearings with the request to adopt the budget that has been presented to you over the last month. Just as a recap, these are the council priorities that we used to formulate and put together. Every single department director and the executive team took these priorities into consideration in developing the 2-year budget that has been presented and included in your package. Now summarizing the general fund operating budget for the next 2 years. Sorry, I'm having a problem with my clicker today. Here's the overall general fund operating summary. As you see, the proposed fiscal year 2021-22 and 22-23 are balanced. We should note, though, that for 22-23, we are proposing a transfer in from the ARP funds of about $770,000, and that gives us a year, a full 12, a little bit less than 12 months to continue to refine the 2022-23 budget and continue to revise the revenues as the economy changes and hopefully gets a little bit better. Going on to the revenues, these revenues are still the same projected revenues that you saw in the preliminary budget, with the exception of there is a $100,000 added in year 22-23 for a community economic development grant of $100,000 in 22-23 to support some community and economic development activities. Now, going on to the expenditures, again, the bottom line remain the same. There are a few items noted in the staff report that were changed up a little bit, and we'll go over them in much more detail as we go through the positions. Now, just as a summary of the proposed positions that were discussed at the May 25th meeting, Just as a reminder, in 2021, we adopted 156 positions through the ERIP and other strategies that management has undertaken. We are proposing a total position control of 144 positions. That's a reduction of 12 positions from what was adopted last year. There's just one or two minor modifications from the May 25th proposal. We did, the Public Works Director did request a Deputy Director for Public Works in exchange for the utility manager that had been proposed. So now we're proposing a Deputy Director instead of a Utilities Manager. And we are adding one FTE for Equipment Mechanic too.
What was the amount of total positions again?
144 proposed, Dr. Sanchez.
Thank you.
So just to summarize the general fund once again, the 21, 22, and 22 and 23 have been balanced revenues to expenditures. We'll continue to refine the 2023 budget and in hopes to not use one-time transfers of ARP funds to completely structure the budget. Despite continued challenges, this budget still accomplishes many of the top priorities that the City Council set forward in 2019. It does not draw upon any of the reserves, so ongoing revenues fully pay for all of the general fund expenditures that have been itemized. However, this still does not provide for capital project funding. Now, turning it over to the enterprise funds. Again, there have been some small modifications in the water fund. You'll see the major changes were as we were still working on the 2-year capital outlay plan. You do see some movement that is reflected in the staff report of just some capital outlay costs that were moved over, but very minimal. The golf course remains unchanged. I will bring up the discussion that was had in the study session that the golf course revenues and expenditures here reflect ongoing maintenance of the golf course. However, we were given direction to look into different operating mixes, including just operating a banquet and reception area or operating a banquet and reception with limited maintenance and operations of the remaining golf course areas subsequent to September 7th. So that will be brought forward when those numbers are more finite for adjustments to this budget. Now, just as a recap of the 5-year capital improvement plan, we have $187.6 million in the next 5 years of planned capital improvement projects, primarily in the areas of streets and water. Most of the water initiatives including the PFAS are included in here. In addition to that, there are water pipes, water main, tank improvements that are included in the water numbers. Streets, we have major street overlay, slurry seal, things of that nature. Monica, can you help me out with this? Chip, what is the term?
Chip seal and overlay. So basically, we're going to use both COP-funded bond funds to do all of our street maintenance.
Yes, so we do have the first tranche of $15 million, thank you, Monica, to fund a majority of the first 2 years of the street overlay projects that Monica mentioned. We'll be coming back to the City Council to request authorization for the second tranche of $15 million. Now here's a summary of all the city funds by major fund category. Within the general fund, we also have included fleet funds 170, so it's added to the mix and didn't want to confuse it between what you saw in the first slide and here, but it's just two combined funds that are, it's just a requirement of how we're supposed to show it. You have total revenues of 110.3 million against expenditures of 150 million. So the delta is existing fund balance to fund the expenditures. That's year one. And here's year two, close to 93.9 million in revenues against 104.3 in expenditures. Now moving on, now that we have a little bit more solidified the 2-year budget, now we can trend out the next 3 years, and we trended out all the way to 2026. And so here's a first look, a very draft version of the 5-year forecast. We'll also continue to refine it and bring it forward as part of the long-term strategic plan results coming later this year. Now, even though we have structurally balanced the budget for fiscal year 22, we do have a little bit more work to do in 2023, as we mentioned earlier. So we had to plug that with about $770,000 of ARP funds. So going out into the future years, we do still have an expected deficit in the out years for the next 3 years. And so I just wanted to give you a brief overview of some of the assumptions that we built in. We know that the CPI right now is adjusting and basically readjusting, based on what happened in the pandemic. So when we're looking at a longer range CPI, we assumed a 2% CPI for the out years for most revenue and expenditure categories, with the exception of property tax. So property tax, we know it's a little bit more favorable because of the increase in valuations. But, let's say that our valuations increase 11% because of Prop 13 for the existing homes that haven't turned over. They're limited to a 2% increase for property taxes. So we assumed a 5% increase in the property tax income for 2024, and then we're expecting it to taper down to more of a 2% level, as the expectation is that interest rates will slightly come up in the out years after the economy tapers down. Over on the salaries and benefits, we've built in very modest salary growth just for merit increases. So that's when someone is, we have steps within each classification. So for those people that are still continuing to move up in their step ladder, we've built in an average of 2% salary increase. Benefits, on the benefits side, we have a 10% increase in CalPERS annually, and that's just the historical trend. 5% to health benefit increases, and again, that's a historical trend. 10% in general liability and workers' comp premiums, and that's lowered from the 20% for the first years that we're experiencing. We have a 5.5% increase to the public safety contract, and again, that's more in line with more normal times. And lastly, 2% for all other categories. So this is with the existing service level, with the 144 positions that are included in the budget, and with no changes to the operations. So now we wanted to take you through just the future and the work that we're continuing in terms of the strategic plan. We are meeting with the City Council on June 12th to discuss. City Council will hold a retreat, and which all the executive team will be a part of. And so we'll get direction from City Council in terms of where the long-term strategic plan should be taken and some of the goals that City Council will provide to us. And then we'll take that and formulate what the established mission, vision, and values are. We do have a strategic working group, members of the existing workforce, to lead the efforts in putting together the employee surveys and strategize in terms of how the community meetings are going to be held. And they'll compile all of the results provided to the executive team so that we'll continue to build the long-term strategic plan, vision, and line it up with the next 2-year budget. And that concludes my presentation. So the recommended action here is the same that is articulated in the agenda report in front of you. We're all available to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Questions? No questions? You know, in reviewing the budget, you know, I am a little bit concerned with the revenue situation since it really doesn't show that there's going to be a, you know, significant coverage for the expenses in here. Now, that justifies the plan that we have to engage in terms of a diversification of our revenues, doesn't it?
It sure does, Mr. Mayor.
And we're taking steps to
Yes.
solidify that process?
We definitely are taking the additional steps. As you see in your budget, there is an investment on the economic development initiatives to the tune of about $1.6 million, I believe. So those are things that we are going to implement to help us create additional revenue streams and supplement as well.
Do we need to make a motion to get
Yes.
this?
Motion to approve.
I'd like to just make a brief comment. I didn't have any questions, but I just have a comment. I want to thank all staff for all of your hard work. I want to thank you for pushing back on me when we would engage philosophically and through argumentation. I really appreciate that. And I have the utmost respect for everyone who participated in this budget process. Having said that, I will not be voting for this budget for the following reasons. I do not agree with the reduction in staff, or at least the positions from 156 to 144. I would rather like to see that those positions left on the docket or the master schedule, but unfunded. It's no financial hit on the city. Furthermore, the reclassification of positions, I'd like to see them open for them to be posted internally for people to attempt to move up and be promoted. And I fear that we, once again, haven't engaged the community enough. We haven't engaged the stakeholders regarding the budget because of COVID. You know, there's a whole host of people outside screaming and protesting. We really should have allowed them to come in and speak their piece, and we should listen to them and then move forward. But that hasn't happened. We haven't done that. We attempted to, but it really wasn't. We need to listen to the public regarding the adoption of our budget because it's 2 years. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, staff, our Finance Director Garcia, your first budget that you're presenting, well, good job on overall presentation, the study sessions, very comprehensive, very detailed. I've seen a lot of folks in your seat, and you've done a great job. And to the overall staff, you presented a budget that I believe speaks to what we've done in the past to lead us in the path of having certain policies, but also speaks to the work that you've done to be efficient and always mindful of the dollars of the community. And then looking at the 2-year process and looking at a potential balanced budget. So I think overall, this is well done, well crafted. I would add, and I've been speaking about it as well, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this budget with leaving those vacant positions unfilled, unfunded, and the ability to negotiate these classifications, as was stated by Councilmember Lara. So that'd be my motion, to approve this budget under those conditions.
Do I hear a second?
I second that.
Roll call?
I have a question prior to,
Excuse me?
I have a question regarding.
Discussion?
Question, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So if they include the reclassification and the position, will there be a fiscal impact, a change in the budget financially?
No, there will not be any change in the budget. There will be a change in the master position control. We will have to add back those positions into the master position control.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Camacho?
Yes.
Councilmember Laura?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutz?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez?
No.
Mayor Elias.
No.
Motion fails.
I'd like to move to approve the budget as the fiscal year operating budget for our program as recommended by the staff.
I second.
Did you hear the motion?
Councilmember Camacho,
No.
Councilmember Laura,
No.
Councilmember Lutz,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
Mayor Elias.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next one, council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we move on to item 2, which is also a public hearing for consideration of zoning code amendment number 118, amending section 18.04 relating to signs and advertising to allow digital billboards in 2 specific locations. At this time, has there been any comment submitted on these items, Madam City Clerk? Have there been any requests? No. It'd be appropriate then to receive staff's report and move forward with this item.
Yes, at this time, I'd like to turn over to Director Garcia.
This is a similar item that we had brought forward about creating a billboard ordinance that would allow for digital billboards to be identified in different locations along the freeways. We have a presentation, if you'd like. It's very similar to what we had discussed in closed session. It went in on May 17th in front of the Planning Commission for their consideration of this ordinance. Next slide, please. And what it's mainly doing is allowing for digital billboards to be added into the sections 18.04 and 18.46 along certain sections of the 605 freeway and the 5 freeway. Next slide. It set up different distances. Basically, we wanted to educate the Planning Commission as well about the fact that the Caltrans is going to continue to control distances from residential zones based on the amount of light that is emanated from a digital billboard. And we were hoping to limit it to certain industrial areas within the city along the 605 and 5 freeway. They're very limited areas. We wanted to make sure that they understood that there would be certain distances between each billboard, whether it's a digital to a digital to a static billboard, and static to static. So, next slide. Caltrans does still regulate and control billboards that are constructed within 660 feet. And next slide is showing you one of the brightness studies that they utilized, the Dr. Lewin study, to come up with their determinations as far as how far away you should be from residential and what the readability of those digital billboards are. Next slide. Not only will Caltrans be making an approval of this because they have to regulate which ones are within a certain right-of-way or within landscaped or non-landscaped areas. The entire stretch of Pico Rivera is in a landscaped freeway area. So not only do you need to make sure that you have property owner consent, but there are certain distances that you got to keep from as far as residential, and having not only that the if you need to relocate, you can relocate into a landscaped area. So we got into all those details with the Planning Commission. Next slide. And not only that, we wanted to make sure that they understood that there are certain circumstances where you can relocate a sign, and that would retain the right so you can go into a landscaped area along a freeway. Thank you. We are proposing that if billboards are developed within the city, that the city council and the Planning Commission would be able to review that via a development agreement. And because we wanted more than just property owner consent. We wanted to make sure that it came before a public process and would go through a development agreement approval per the government code. Next slide. We would make sure that any billboards that are developed would have a public benefit sharing and a public benefit description, so that there would be public service announcements that could be displayed on there. And then we could also get a little more detailed as far as what we do not want displayed on the digital billboards. So, next slide. We worked with our consultant, Terra Realty, who helped us understand and negotiate with property owners that are potentially going to propose for 2 digital billboards along the 605 freeway. Next slide. And at the beginning of his work, that consultant, Scott Sheldon, he went and looked at different locations along the 605 and the one location along the 5 freeway at the very bottom there, area number 7. Next slide. Just to give you an idea about what could be, what the visibility is for folks traveling along the 605 freeway and for those along the 5. And so area number 1, next slide, and area number 5 were determined by the Planning Commission to be the only areas that they thought would be appropriate, have good distance and readability. Next slide. So they wanted us to remove area 7 from consideration. We actually thought that was a good idea. It is substantially distanced from the 5 freeway, so it would have poor visibility if there were to be a proposal on that property. Next slide. So they did recommend that we modify the ordinance and present it to City Council so it only worked in those 2 areas, and it was approved and recommended 4-1 vote to go forward for your consideration tonight. Next slide. And so tonight, what is being recommended is that council approve the first reading of the zone code amendment, and that we would bring this back at the next regularly scheduled meeting, and it would become effective 30 days after that to allow digital billboards to be developed in areas 1 and 5, which are basically the Bay Bar Road property and the Carlson site along the 605 freeway. And that concludes, if you have any questions, otherwise that concludes our.
Have we taken into consideration the widening of the 605 freeway that's going to be occurring?
Yes, and the areas that are being proposed on the two properties, in particular, the Carlson and the Bay Bar, are outside of those boundaries.
Okay. Councilman Lutz?
Thank you, Mayor. Director Garcia, if I were to ask a question about Area 2, which is known as the Carlson site.
Yes, sir.
Or as to a lot of community members, that big plot of land of 19 acres just south of Beverly.
Yes.
The 605. I've always been a proponent of that property being utilized as residential use in the future, possibly townhomes, generating tax revenue, property tax revenue, prime electrical use revenue, water revenue, and sales tax revenue. But of course, that's a long ways away. I know right now the proposed use is to put a potential warehouse. If we as a council today agree to approve this Area 1 and Area 2, would that restrict Area 2 to simply only be warehouse or commercial use if a billboard is put there and prevent housing, which would, in my perception as a real estate broker, would be in the best interest of the community?
It would not. Luckily, because it's a large parcel, that contiguous parcel, I believe, is about 18 and a half acres. So it would allow enough distance if there were to be some other use other than a warehouse proposed there. Or Planning Commission or City Council could approve or disapprove that development agreement for that billboard in the future. So tonight would only be adding into our, doing the zone code amendment to allow digital billboards to even occur within the city. And in the Planning Commission's recommendation, only in those 2 areas.
Okay, so the option of rezoning that into residential would still be open, and we could also benefit from revenue generation of a billboard.
Yes.
Thank you.
Pro Tem?
No, no questions.
I move as recommended.
Make a second.
Can we have a motion to? Yes?
That was
Yes, second?
Councilmember Camacho,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Elias?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, excuse me?
Consent.
Oh, you're done, okay, good. Public comments? We received written communications from the following: Jose Sanchez, Maurice Ramirez, American Asphalt Representative regarding item number 7, Rosemead Boulevard Rehabilitation Project. We received 39 emails in support of the golf course operations. Emails containing the written communications were provided to all city council members. Okay, on the agenda, we have a consent calendar.
Mayor, if I may, I'd like to pull item 8 for discussion.
Okay. Item 8,
Mayor, I'd like to pull item 6 and 7, please.
item 6,
And 7, yes, sir.
Councilman?
I move to approve the remainder consent items.
Excuse me?
I move to approve the remainder consent
Okay,
items.
all right.
I second.
Oh, wait a minute, just, you want to? Yep. Okay. So we had 6 and 8?
I believe, Mayor, we have 6, 7, and 8, is that correct? And then that would be approval of items 3, 4, 5, 9, and 10.
Okay, do we have a motion? Yeah, second?
Second.
Councilmember Camacho?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Elias?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item number 6, discussion.
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like a little bit, my suggestion is that we move this to the next city council meeting. I'd just like a little bit more time to read this and ask some questions about it. This present meeting was very intensive in regards to the budget and other items that took a lot of my time. Is there any issues with us punting this to the next meeting?
No, sir, it just needs to be adopted before the beginning of the fiscal year. We do have a representative from Chandler Asset Management, if you want to discuss it here or in the next meeting, so they'll be available.
Preferably for myself, the next meeting.
I'd second that.
That would be in the form of a motion, Councilmember, to continue this matter?
Yes, thank you very much. Then, in the form of a motion, I move that we move item 6, review and approve investment policy for fiscal year 2021, 2022, to the next council meeting.
We would need a second to that,
Second.
Mr. Mayor.
You second?
I concur.
Okay, okay. That's all we need, just a second right there.
Well, yes, if there's no objection, then that will be the order, so
Thank you.
be held over.
And City Clerk, that would be put into new business?
That would be back on consent, Mayor.
Or either consent or a regular agenda for discussion.
Okay. Item number 7, discussion.
Yes, I move that we discuss this item because, well, City Manager, do you want to speak on this item beforehand, before I raise my objection on why I pulled this?
Sure. As you're all aware, this is the item to rehabilitate the street from Gallatin to Whittier Boulevard. This is a quite a large project, a road improvement project along that corridor. As you're well aware, council at a point in time wanted to make this a priority. There were some issues that some residents were experienced along that roadway due to a water line that was being pushed across Rosemead Boulevard. So that is the item before you today.
The reason why I pulled this item is because I don't think that we, as a city, we have made the necessary planning. We've had recent discussions with Central Basin regarding recycled water pipelines. I think it would be prudent that we attempt to place recycled water pipelines in the area that's going to be paved, so that we could attempt to feed those medians with recycled water, so that those medians are not dirt. Because once you pave this street, there's a moratorium, at least 10 years, that we can't break it open. So would like us to spend a little bit more time, hopefully get the recycled water infrastructure in, and then pave that road. That's my recommendation.
Is it form of motion?
Well, Steve, could you just elaborate on our discussion with Central Basin and if this is feasible? They said that there's the likelihood that they can run recycled water line.
Yeah, in our meeting with Central Basin, we spoke to the executive director, and he had mentioned that there is a reimbursement program based in collaboration with Metropolitan Water District that would allow to put in that infrastructure at no cost to us, as long as we lease a certain amount of acre feet per year, and that would be part of the deal points. Once that is paid, we are no longer obligated if the event we want to back out. I know at one point this project was put on the priority list, but if it's council's will to have us take a look and see how we could implement reclamation lines, that is something that we can look into.
Lastly, also by slightly delaying this, there's an issue with the bidding, and we have the potential of saving some more money. It was in regards to the public comment, just the letter. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yes, there is a letter that was recently written. The first low bidder did not comply with the letter of assent. They recently filled that letter of assent, so they're asking for council to consider that. It is $100,000 lower. That is why the second bid is being utilized now. But if we do take a look at this reclamation line, we could basically come back. It would have to be rebid out because of the lines that are going back in.
Got it. But we have a potential for saving money. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, this is a closed bid project.
Yes.
Yeah, so that would, yes, I know staff had mentioned that this vendor missed part of the application, and I believe it was specific to a labor agreement, but from what I read in what they presented was that it was an error on their part. Is there discretion that we can do in such a dynamic, especially if it's a closed bid?
In consultation with the city attorney today, there is some discretion that if council wants to award to that bidder as a result of the lack of signature on that document, that could happen.
I'm all for saving $1 or $2, assuming that's correct, and we don't get ourselves into a protest or lawsuit by a particular bidder.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, because the way that our public works bids are structured, the City Council has a right to waive any minor irregularities. The failure to execute a document in this situation, in my estimation, it could be considered a minor irregularity. If the council wants to hold this matter over, have staff take a complete and thorough examination of this item and bring it back to you probably at your next council meeting, we can do so and address all those questions and issues.
And on relation to the Central Basin Municipal Water District and recycle lines, if there is a viable option that it doesn't impact the overall schedule, I'm sure there'll be a delay, but I think if we can get more for that initial investment, it's worth looking at. So I would agree.
We can do that too, also.
Do you need a motion for us to?
That would be appropriate. Entertain a motion to continue this matter to your next city council meeting.
Okay, and therefore I'd like to propose that we move item number 7 in regards to the rehabilitation project, which is very important. We all agree.
Okay.
Rosemead Boulevard.
And we have a second with Council Camacho.
Thank you.
Number 8.
Thank you, Mayor. I pulled item 8 because item 8 is about the security of our community. And we're talking about Rio Hondo Park in the northern section of our community. This here is awarding security cameras to be placed in the park facility to provide security for the residents that utilize that park during the daytime hours and during the nighttime hours. And similar to those surveillance cameras that people have in the private sector, such as Ring, you have instant access, and you have the ability to communicate through a speaker system to someone who may be doing something inappropriately in the parking lot or the park grounds. This is something that our Director Ugar worked on, and I'm very proud, very, very proud, because this is just one step. We will have security cameras, which are in essence our security guards of our park facilities, having a watchful eye protecting our residents 24/7, eventually in all our parks. And Director Ugar, can you give a little more detail on that?
City Manager, would you like me to give a presentation or?
Yes, Director, please give a presentation.
Perfect. Honorable Mayor and Council, first I want to thank our City Manager, Steve Carmona, for his leadership on this, and Mayor Elias for your leadership in creating the Safety Ad Hoc Committee and appointing Councilmember Lutz, because this has been a very fast-moving project, but a great project, and it's really due to the Safety Ad Hoc Committee that we've got this pilot program to bring to you today. I also wanted to thank Lieutenant Hutak from the Sheriff's Department, because I've been working with her on this project and working with our team, our media team, to ensure that all players were involved and that the sheriffs were behind us 100%. So if you can go to the next slide. So as a background, I just explained, we all know that we had the Safety Ad Hoc Committee, but Gabe, if you can go to the next slide. I'm sorry, the next slide. Didn't realize that was. We had, in Prop 68, when we applied for the grant for Rio Hondo and Smith Park, it was a great opportunity for us to go out and do the community outreach to our residents. We applied also in 2019, so we have 3 years of data collected from our residents and their top 2 items that they wanted to see in Rio Hondo Park, as well as other parks, is safety and security measures. One being lighting, and the second being security cameras. So this pilot program accomplishes that. Our recommendation tonight is to go with Amtech Total Security. The cost is $100,205, and there will be an annual cost after that, and that is for software updates. This is really top leading edge quality cameras that we're getting. We listened to the Safety Ad Hoc Committee. We also, Mr. Carmona, myself, and Councilmember Lutz went to the city of Paramount and visited their park sites. And what they're utilizing right now is a DVR system, which is still high quality, but it's a little bit antiquated when you're dealing with technology. It's a little bit outdated. These systems that we have that we're going to be putting in Rio Hondo Park is real time. It's we can be looking at the cameras and we can be sending links to the sheriff. The sheriffs can be handling things in real-time fashion. We don't have to go to the park and schedule a time to download anything. It's really quite elaborate. If you can go to the next slide. We've got a ton of features. Pan tilt, this is one of the things that when I called the other cities for references that they loved, is their city clerk loved this option, because a lot of times when people put public records requests in to find out information, these cameras have date time stamped. They can go back and look at things. They can look at license plates. They have face recognition. They have zoom in, zoom out, really phenomenal features. Right, we can record videos. We can change the camera positions at any time. One of the things that the Safety Ad Hoc Committee wanted, and Councilmember Lutz, is he wanted the microphone feature. That we had 6 companies do a walkthrough with us. None of the 6 companies that did the walkthrough could do that feature. However, the Amtech understands the feature that we're talking about, and so as an add-on, we are adding 6 microphones that will be attached to 6 different poles, and so the sheriffs will be able to monitor them and say, hey, get out, we see you, or the sheriffs are coming. And so also our recreation staff will be able to do that, and we'll also put one in the Director of Public Works if she wants one, or wherever you'd like to put one. So we will be able to do that. It was just an added feature that we needed to add. We can go to the next slide. This is Rio Hondo Park, and this is all of the coverage that will be, this is it. I mean, it's 18 different cameras, and all of the 6 companies that came to the walkthrough felt this was the right coverage. So even the top 2 that came in, Bargain Bite and Amtech, they all had the same type of coverage. Bargain Bite had 15 cameras, Amtech has 18 cameras, and we decided that Amtech was the more qualified vendor, as well as we like the camera system, which is a Verkada's camera. We also have the Verkada company here with us. If you'd like to see a demo, there's no pressure, but in case you wanted to see it, we have them here tonight. So our next steps is to award the agreement, and we'll start the project immediately within the next week or 2 as soon as we get the cameras, as soon as we get the contract signed, and then we should have this completed and up and running by July.
I want to tell the mayor, thank you very much for tasking me to handle the project of community safety, because this is just one item that we are on our way to completing in just one park. And with time, we'll be able to do all the parks to protect our community. I grew up in front of Rivera Park, and there's been a lot of times that had those cameras been installed, a lot of riffraff and things that shouldn't be going on in those parks would have been avoided. And with that microphone and speaker feature, people will likely say, probably not the best place that I should be doing things that I shouldn't be doing. And so I'm very happy about that we executed on that. And of course, we would never be able to do it without the city manager and Director Ugar and the rest of the staff. So thank you. And there's more to come. More to come. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to motion that we approve the Rio Hondo Park Security Camera Surveillance System and award the agreement.
I'll second the motion, but I do have a question.
Yes.
I think this is great prevention tools, and also for the ability to potentially apprehend or those who choose to do graffiti and amongst other things. But you did mention real time, and you mentioned about putting it in somebody's office, the sheriff department. Are we already having somebody dedicated to watch these videos on a regular basis? Is that part of the commitment here?
So what Lieutenant Hutak and I talked about is that she took me over to their control center over at the Sheriff's Department. And so what is included in this bid tonight is we will be purchasing them a monitor that they will be putting in their system, and we will be paying for the connection into their system. They will have all 18 cameras on that monitor system at any time. So it will be going at all times. So they have a system currently up with cameras throughout their city. So they could look at any time their, I'm sorry, what are they called? Dispatchers could look up and see, as well as any of the officers who are working that night can have it on their phones as well.
So it's a built-in camera system in the already station.
We are going to put one in for them.
And I asked the question, thank you for the clarification, because that's very important. It puts the value of these cameras to a whole different level. And one of the reasons we chose not to go some years ago in the parks, because the sheriff department at the time said, you know what, we can't monitor these cameras. We need somebody dedicated just specifically for that, and we're not going to put some. To know that this approval of this recommendation includes that, that's a high value, and I wanted to point that out. So,
Great.
thank you. And again,
Before we take that vote, Mr. City Manager, you had a chance to talk to me about this, and I'd like you to share what you talked to me in terms of the big picture and what this is the beginning of.
Yeah, this is definitely a pilot program. Mayor, after we kind of see the results, which I know there will be very positive, this could lead to a rollout in all our parks eventually. So this is the first step of that process. And I think, if we take a look at what it's going to provide for the community, I think it's going to definitely create a safer environment for this park and for our future parks.
Chairman Jacob Rodriguez of the Parks Commission, Parks and Recreation, do you have any comments on it?
Well, I'm excited to see this first step in improving public safety within our parks. While we haven't had a park deputy attend our recent meetings, in the previous year, we used to have a park deputy provide reports on the number of arrests in various parks. And throughout my time on the commission, I remember being alarmed at just the volume of activity that was going on in particular at Rio Hondo Park, Smith Park. That were some of the central areas for crime. So to see that this is being considered and brought before the council is definitely reassuring, both as a commissioner and as a resident of the city.
Sir, any comments? No comment. Okay. So we had a second? Okay. We'll take a vote.
Councilmember Camacho?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutz?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez?
Yes.
Mayor Elias?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. We go to our regular agenda. Item number 11, discussion item, legal authority to issue pension obligation bonds.
Yes, Mayor, this was a request on your behalf. This is to discuss the state constitutional exemption for pension obligation bonds. So at this time, I'd like to, there is a staff report that was prepared, but at this time, I want to turn over the floor to you for your comments.
Okay. When we originally were given the plan for the bonds, okay, it was, it was a document there, and we went over the bond issues, but I didn't recall towards the end there, and again, I may have missed the discussion there, that part of the bond program that you wanted us to approve was also to approve, okay, a situation where we would circumvent the state of California Constitution, okay, which requires, okay, a 2/3 vote if there is any debt that is going to be larger than the revenues, the annual revenues of the municipality. In this case, the bond amount would have exceeded the amount. So my point is that the state constitution, okay, is there to provide the city and residents protection from it. So I want to have that as a separate voting issue on it, because again, the argument in terms of the bonds and so on, that could lay on its own there. But the fact is that if we do go into the process, we do need to get 2/3 vote in there. We need to get it out in the community. Now, if this is the kind of deal that you say that it is, then there's not going to be any problem with you getting the okay and approval from the voters. But again, I see it as a situation where we are committing our community and residents to $72 million, okay? And it requires, I feel very strongly, their approval.
Yeah, Mayor, I guess the only comment I'd have is that as it relates to what happened the last council meeting is council authorized the item to move forward through the validation process. This particular issue, there is an exemption to the state constitution, and so that gives the ability to move the item forward through the validation process.
I understand the exceptions to it, and one of them is that if it was a school that needed repair, that would be an exemption. The other one is the fact that you would turn a debt into an obligation, okay? So those are the kind of exemptions that exist in this. And of course, you're going to try to make the argument that it's going to fit in one of those exemptions. And again, I don't think it's appropriate.
Yeah, Council, I believe our bond counsel opined on that at the last meeting. Again, this is a state mandated obligation, therefore it qualifies for the exemption.
This is a state-mandated obligation?
Yes, our pension fund.
If I may attempt to address that, Mr. Mayor, it's actually, it's a contractual obligation the city has. When the city formed and developed employees and developed a retirement system, the city has executed an agreement with PERS, the California Public Employment Retirement System. If the city has a contractual obligation to fund the PERS account. And if there is shortcomings, which there are, the city still is on the hook for those dollars. And I'm not looking to speak for bond counsel, they're not here tonight, but they were attempting to explain, I believe, and I understand and respect the mayor's position. However, the part of the process that the council has approved at your last meeting is to authorize bond counsel to file a lawsuit in the city, in the Superior Court on behalf of the city and notify all individuals that may feel otherwise. They could challenge the lawsuit, and it's what's called a validation action. And so if the court, if a judge at the Superior Court agrees with you, Mayor, this matter will not go forward. If the judge of Superior Court agrees otherwise, then the bonds can be issued. That's the purpose of proceeding with a validation action. And with that validation action is another exemption to the two-thirds vote, as the mayor is citing. So, again, again, I'm not speaking for bond counsel, but I think if they were here tonight, they would probably be saying the same thing. And it's not unique. This is not what Pico Rivera is looking to do is not unique. Many other communities have done so because of the shortfall in the PERS retirement fund. So it's an attempt to refinance the existing debt, and the funds that are being used to pay for that debt is general fund dollars. So there's not any new or additional taxes that are being assessed against the residents or property owners, but it's only the general fund dollars that can be used to pay off that debt. And in the process of refinancing that debt, there is a savings of, Angelina, approximately how much? I'm sorry to interrupt. About.
I apologize, 15 million.
How many dollars is anticipated to save the taxpayers over the course of the?
15 million.
15 million.
Yes.
So.
And if I may add something, so the validation process takes it to the court, through the courts, to ensure that we are following constitutional law in identifying just how we are exempt and how this is one of the allowable means to pay off this debt.
My position is, I've heard the bond project and so on, and I'm not really comfortable with the approaches being used to service this situation here. We recently, if you've gone to the market, food prices have increased 4%, 5%. Okay, our inflation rate is going up, and eventually, to slow down the economy, the interest rates are going to go up. Okay, we're in a situation right now where the only thing that we're offering right now, you said in 3 years we're going to be in the negative. Okay, we're going to be in the negative. So we're going to incur debt, okay, that we're not going to be able to legitimately, provide a secure source of revenue, okay, a source of revenue, and I haven't heard. Now, we've talked about the diversification of revenue, but it's not in the plan, okay? I haven't seen a plan that should be in the front end of this situation right here. I don't think your proposal has been well thought out. Okay. So what I would like to do is that I would like to separate it. I would like to make a motion, okay, that we split this, and that that we actually vote, okay, to put this up on the ballot for our residents to vote on. Now, I just want to be on the record. I'd like to make the motion. Do I have a second?
Just a point of clarification there. So your motion wants to bring back this item at the next council meeting to vote on whether or not we should put it on the ballot.
Yes.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I have a question that I'd like to ask staff for clarification. The existing debt is currently with
CalPERS.
CalPERS.
Yes, sir.
And the current rate that we are making our payments on is at what rate versus the new refinance rate?
It's at 6%, and the new refinance rate would be somewhere between 3 and 4, depending on when we go out to market. Now, another point of clarification is that we haven't issued any of the bonds, or we're not ready to issue any of the bonds. And so that will be brought back to council once we go through the validation action. Now, again, that validation through the courts will tell the community that this doesn't have to go to the vote of the people. That is what the courts will decide when the lawsuit is decided. So at that point, we can come back for further discussion on the POBs.
I run a platform on accountability and transparency, and it just requires that, that if we're going to push forward with this kind of debt, that we need to put it on the ballot.
So it's just comment, or a couple questions. One, once again, we already have a contractual obligation to pay this debt we already have at a 6% rate, and we're looking to refinance at a potential 3 to 4% rate to potentially save the residents of Pico Rivera $15 million.
15 million, yes, sir.
It's pretty straightforward as such.
Yes, it is. And in the previous presentations, it's our unfunded actuarial liability is 40 million as of the last valuation, right? And we also, charted out a historical of just how big the UAL has grown over the last 10 to 20 years, despite the fact that we always make the payments that are required by CalPERS. It continues to grow. So if we do nothing, that UAL is going to continue to grow at a rate of 10% per year. And we're not going to be able to do anything about the rate that is charged to us by CalPERS, right? We're going to continue to pay that 6 to 7% interest rate. And we're not going to be able to capture the interest income that is stated by CalPERS, that is assumed by CalPERS. So that's always a catch-up that is included in every year's UAL.
And every city in the state of California is in the same position we are as it relates to PERS, with exception to difference in dollars.
It depends on kind of the pension package that they have. We have a 2.5% at 55. Others have a 2 at 55. Those that have police and fire have a 3% at 50, so that's a little bit more costly. But yes, and so another point that I'd like to make is that the validation process is something that we have to go through right now, and most cities have to go through related to the POBs because there is really no case law, right? So it's a city by city basis, right? The court, they have to test it out every single time through the courts. This is the same that would happen with CFDs early on or assessment districts early on because there was no case law. Case law was developed, it was decided, over multiple times, it became standard, and then, they were free to issue bonds, using that assessment district CFD guideline. Here, POBs are relatively new, so they still have to be tried by the courts every single time.
There's two other important factors to distinguish between the example of school district bonds. In the school district situation, when a school district issues bonds, they are generally issuing bonds for new construction. So that's incurring new debt to do improvements and other things for the schools. In our situation here, we have an existing debt. The difference, it would be like taking your home and refinancing your home and trying to get a lower interest rate and saving money over the term of your mortgage. I forgot what the second point I was going to make, but
And so as clarified again, there's this no new debt, unlike the example you mentioned with issues related to a school bond, construction bond, which in essence, if we were to move forward and approve and get to the point of issuance, our residents are not going to see an increase, a fee of any sort on their property taxes and/or on any taxes whatsoever. This is nothing, I mean, again, it's a debt, and like you mentioned, it's like for refinancing my mortgage, saving money on the long term. But again, it's clear, nobody's going to get any taxes, fees, and so forth.
No.
Let me quote the California Constitution, Article 16, Public Finance, Section 18. No county, city, town, township, board of education, or school district shall incur any indebtedness or liability in any manner for any purpose exceeding in any year the income and revenue provided for such year, without the assent of 2/3 of the voters.
And
That's what my position is.
And with that, again, through state law that we follow, state law allows us to go through a process. Some will use circumvent, others would just be a process that we follow. And we're using this process, which, as you stated, City Council, that the courts can deny our lawsuit, if you will, to allow for that to happen.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the answer to that question is yes. If the court believes that the city, by moving forward with the pension bonds, is in fact in violation of constitutional provision that the mayor cites, the court will say, sorry, city, you can't do it. If the court disagrees with that position, the court, through the validation process, will say you have a green light to proceed with the bonds. What happens after that is it comes back to the council. You're going to see this issue again. And, if the mayor still is not, if he still feels that the California Constitution is being violated, he can, the mayor has that opportunity.
And on the basis of accountability, there's, again, these checks and balances, measures that you've illustrated that can make sure that we are accountable all the way through until we make our final vote. That ultimately, we're accountable to the residents, right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I have a question. So it's my understanding there's going to be a special election, right? For the recall of Gavin Newsom, the governor, correct? My assumption is that we could then put this on the ballot during that time period, right? If that recall election happens at the beginning of November or at the end of October, when do we have to do the formality so that it's on the ballot?
Late August.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Council?
Yes. If we did follow through with this motion so that the residents would be the ones ultimately deciding on this, do we run the risk of being in a position where the interest rate is now back up to 6% or even higher? And at that point, then we lose out the opportunity of saving money?
Yes, and not only that, but we do have, bond counsel, we have not underwriters, but municipal financial advisors that we've engaged to, go through this process for us. And so they've already incurred time and expense to do that. So we would have to also consider those expenses, as well as the continuing increases in the UAL. So part of the 5-year forecast that we showed, again, was an assumption of a 10% increase to the annual CalPERS contributions based on a historical trend of what our increases have been. So we're going to have continued increases in pension costs no matter what. What we're trying to do here with this action was bring, an instrument to try to mitigate future increases. And so the POBs would address that along with a pension policy to structure a way to neutralize any further increases in costs. This is only to decrease our pension costs year over year, not to increase.
Mayor, one concern that I have, again, it's all based on possibility. We don't have a crystal ball. But if we go through the motions, historically, when there's a new presidency, interest rates tend to go up. And we being in that position now where we have a new presidency, And rates have historically been low for a good amount of time, and they've been saying that they will start to go up across the board. I would hate to be in a position where we go through the motions and now we miss out on opportunity to save money for the residents if we follow through with this formality.
You just described why we need to be able to do it with the interest rates going, because again, what we have to do is that we have to play the interest rate situation. We have a spread, the report says 4%, okay? So we have 7%, from CalPERS there and 4%. We have that. Now, if there's any increase, okay, in the interest rates, we're going to have a problem, all right? Now, other cities, okay, in fact, studies show that only 5% of the cities that go in this direction make it, okay? Make it in terms of having a strategy to be able to service the debt, okay? That have the ability to service the debt, okay? So, I don't see that, I don't see that situation in terms of it. We're not at that point. We're doing a great job in going towards it, but there's an element of risk here that I think that is beyond the council and should go to the residents. Now, if the program is that good, then they're going to vote in favor of it, okay? So, I am saying we got to put it out in front of the voter. And I think our voters are smart enough right now to be able to understand, okay, that they have a right to be able to vote on something like this. Do I have a second?
Move to the next item.
I just want to be on the record. I didn't have a second.
Noted.
Next.
Yes.
City manager's report.
Yes, Mayor, at this time, I just want to remind council that we do have a staff retreat coming up this Saturday. We do have a report, but that's going to come at new business from one of our directors.
New business?
New business.
No?
I would like to mention something.
What,
Still on the staff report, or are we?
no, we don't have any new business.
To ask the council if they have any new business to put it.
Okay. Or does she go under the good of the order?
No, I have new business, I think,
Okay.
if I may.
No old business? Old business on?
No, sir.
Okay, good of the order.
No, I have new business.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I wanted to bring up an update. I'm discussing with the ad hoc committee for community services, with staff as well as myself, we're discussing issues regarding childcare, especially during the pandemic, for staff. I also participate in a group on Facebook, Pico Rivera Moms, and there has been over 156,000 job loss from April to December during the pandemic, and partially due to no childcare options, schools being closed. And so we were exploring ideas of how we could help residents, mothers and fathers that have children, to be able to participate in the workforce. And one of these options that were explored is a program called We Care. And this is a subscription, so to speak, of 24-hour services that a resident or an employee could participate in, whether there's different providers, childcare providers, based on your need, the age of the child. It could be in-home care, it could be transportation, it could be a small home childcare or a larger group care. However, these providers, it's my understanding, will be regional, and you can select by region and area. So I would like to further consider, have staff work on pursuing, looking into a subscription, and perhaps we could use some of our COVID relief funds to support, especially in the summertime. I know that children are not going to be in school potentially. And so it could assist our staff as well as residents to subscribe. If the city purchases this subscription, perhaps our residents could utilize it to find affordable childcare options within the region that might fit their needs. So this program, I don't know a lot about it, but I would like to see if staff could explore. In addition, there's other programs, another one called TRICARE. So these are options that could provide further community service for our children and families. So that's an update for one of my programs, if I could direct our staff to do so. Secondly, in terms of new business, I wanted to mention, I would like for our Director of Economic Development, if you could please, I received a flyer from the SASFA Director, Executive Director. There was going to be a hiring event on June 14th through 18th. And this is particularly for construction type programs. They're going to pay $14.50 to $21 an hour, full-time benefits, jobs in Pico Rivera, Santa Fe Springs. They're going to be hiring a lot of these businesses, local businesses. So if I could request to please share widely across Pico Rivera, anyone looking for a job. And thirdly, probably would be for Economic Development Director as well. I attended a retirement event for the Lieutenant Colonel of our Marine Corps Reserve, Rudy Salcido, and at this event I learned that, which we've heard before, is that the Marine Corps Reserve will be ceasing operations and closing down in October of 2021. So if you could look into requesting a memo to the Marine Corps Reserve or the Congress to see how we could request priority lease of this land. It's in our city off San Gabriel Parkway, large facility. I think since we are losing so much from the golf course, Streamland Park, that's another parcel of land that we can appeal to Congress. So, and whoever is the entity that would decide that, I know we have no control of the factors, but I would like to pursue that.
Okay.
And I do have some old business, but I'll wait till we get to that item.
And Mayor Pro Tem, just I think on that first item regarding childcare, you'll need a second.
Oh, can I have a second, please? Or Mayor?
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Mayor, I do have one new business, if I may, just real quick. I know this item has been discussed before, has been asked before, but I know as we drive through the city, there's a lot of empty lots, just bare empty lots with no asphalt, just grass and overgrown vegetation, fencing that is, if it has any fencing, it's falling. The corner of Whittier and Paramount is a good example of that one lot next to that, those apartments that are being remodeled. So I'd like for us to look into developing standards so we can hold these property owners accountable and making sure that either they not only maintain their property, but also fence their property. And for those that have fencing that is fallen, then they fix it or, but I would like to ask for a second for us to look at development standards of our empty lots.
I second that.
Okay, for clarification, council member, are you specifying enforcing abatement?
Absolutely. All of the above that allows us to mitigate both the nuisance that these lots create, but also be able to get restitution as to if we need to go in there and clean it up because it's happened before, for us to make sure that we hold them accountable.
Including foreign owners?
All owners. So there's a second, so
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. Good idea.
Okay. Councilman, that's your.
That was my only new business. I do have one old business, but I'll wait until you rotation.
Councilman Lara?
No new business. My comments can wait for the good of the order.
Councilman Lutz?
As far as new business, a big concern in the community for the last year, and more importantly now, at this moment in time, is a good portion of our green space is disappearing. And I remember having a conversation with the city manager, and there is a lot of potential green space that could be utilized as for passive use and active use in these Southern California, as Edison pieces of land that are scattered throughout the community. And I would like to see if maybe we can I'd like to motion to see if we can do a report on which ones are viable so that we can use them for active and passive use for the pieces of land that we're losing from the Army Corps of Engineer and take it from there. So if I'd like to get a second from the rest of the council.
I'll second that. I think it relates to the Marine Corps land as well.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it for new business.
Commissioner Jacob Rodriguez.
Yes, Mayor. So just an update for the Parks and Recreation Commission. The major updates are the decisions, or applications rather, for the Prop 68 grant funds are pending for both the Smith Park Aquatic Center and the Rio Hondo Park redevelopment projects. The city should be hearing whether we will receive those grant funds in the coming months, about late summer, early fall. Secondly, the Parks and Recreation Department is in the process of identifying and evaluating potential locations for a dog park, which is an amenity that residents have continually advocated for. There are many residents who are pet owners who are having to go to adjacent cities, and it would be, a positive step to be able to provide that within our own city. So either one or multiple locations are being looked at for that development. And lastly, there have been ongoing discussions with our Pico Rivera soccer icons, the Roldan brothers who play for the Seattle Sounders, regarding a partnership to create more soccer fields within our city to increase access to the sport and hopefully encourage participation in the sport and cultivate similar talent. We have reached out to the Roldan brothers, and there's already been a meeting with Christian Roldan, the elder brother. So those talks will continue, and hopefully we'll be able to come to a partnership that all parties are amenable to be able to help provide that for the residents of our city. That's the end of the update.
Thank you. Are you going to be showing up to our meetings?
Yes, I'll be attending monthly.
Thank you. Okay. We were discussing the idea of recognizing the heroes of the COVID, situation here. And we had been talking about July, where we could recognize not only the religious, but the medical and the community people that have, that really come through here. Mayor Pro Tem, do you think that you could help us with that?
Sure.
Okay. We were looking at the latter part of July there, okay? And it's really up to, you guys as to how we want to do it.
Under the Community Services Ad Hoc?
Are you receptive to the idea?
Yes, we'll follow up, Mayor.
Okay. Councilman Lutz, you are going to have quite a task in front of you. 4th of July, fireworks. This is a big, big problem, with us. In fact, what we do is that in our community meetings and so on, this is the issue because, again, of the damage that is done, okay, the injuries, and also the animals having to be, put away someplace. We're looking for your committee to establish the strategy that we're going to deal with because, again, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy right here. So can we get, some activity from you on that, working obviously with our sheriffs?
Yes, Mayor, we've been in talks in the Community Safety Ad Hoc Committee as of a week ago. And we're already preparing for the community public service announcements that we're going to be rolling out through social media, advising people that this is a community that safe and sane fireworks are only allowed, and of course, illegal fireworks like the M100s, the M180s, and the half stick of dynamites are not allowed. And if those are utilized and if the individual's caught, then the Sydney ordinance will be enforced when these individuals are caught. So we just want to create awareness through social media, and we'll be rolling that out in the upcoming days so that people are aware that, it is a detriment to the community and the pet owners. And kids often lose a finger, or adults lose a finger when they're having a good time enjoying these unfortunate illegal fireworks. And so we're going to bring the attention to that they are illegal. And through social media, hopefully, we can curtail the quantity of illegal fireworks. So we're on it.
Mr. City Manager, last 4th of July, we had somebody from your IT department develop in the app the ability to be able to report,
Yes.
and that was, it was excellent, okay? I was here on the 4th of July, and I could see that app just, it actually was able to take pictures of, of the people that were, firing off the illegal. Are we going to have that kind of?
Yeah, we'll definitely discuss that in the ad hoc, and it's definitely something that we still have in our toolbox.
Who was the IT individual that was in charge, that was doing that?
That was Paul Gandara.
Is Paul around right now?
No. Oh, there he is. Oh.
Paul, thank you very much. That was a fantastic app, okay? It had me spellbound all 4th of July. Okay? All right. The last item is that, we just recently got news that they've expanded the repair budget for the dam. And what I'd like to do is ask the Economic Development Committee to start positioning yourself, because we're going to have a situation right there where the work is going to have to be done by a prime contractor, okay? What we have to do is that we have to situate ourselves where Pico Rivera businesses and Pico Rivera residents are provided preference and given points to prime contractors when they bid on that. Since we are the designated city in terms of, the ground zero, is that we start developing that kind of capability. Okay, so again, if any prime contractor gets a contract, they're going to have to hire Pico Rivera residents, and they're going to have to use Pico Rivera businesses. Can we do that?
Noted.
Thank you. That's all for me.
I have an item under old business I'd like to discuss.
Good?
Yep, yeah.
Yes, ma'am?
Old business? I wanted to highlight, we already voted for it, but item number 10 regarding the professional services agreement for PFAS and PFOA, and I think this is awesome. It's kind of jumped under our approval radar, but I really want to highlight that to our residents. And I also have a question for our director, Monica Heredia. When will this be fully operational so we can tell residents that your water is being filtered?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Originally, our plan was to have a operating treatment facility by the end of the year. However, due to increasing costs due to COVID and also lack of material, we are running into an issue, which is the reason why we brought this item tonight. And we might be bringing another item, again, to procure more material ahead of time so we don't delay the project. Also, because we are seeking federal funding for this project, we may be required to follow Buy America guidelines, which requires American steel. And there's lack of that material as well and delay. So depending on those items, it may delay the project for another 6 months. So maybe by the end of the fiscal year, so June of 2022.
And we're looking at getting exemptions from the Buy America Steel Act as well. So just to hopefully that if we're successful, that could possibly expedite it.
Two more things really quickly. Sorry. One other thing I wanted to talk about was the visiting briefly the golf course, now that Jacob Rodriguez, our park commissioner, is here, were you all briefed? Did you have a presentation regarding this golf course issue that we discussed this evening?
Yes, we saw the presentation, we were given the presentation rather by Javier, who went over the scope of the project, and we're notified that as the project progresses, the boundaries can shift. So that's why we're still in the stage where we can only plan so far ahead, just because as we break ground, then there are going to be potential changes in the extent of the project. But yes, we did see that presentation.
Thank you. I think also that that's the purpose of the Park Commission, is to be the ears of the community and give our residents the opportunity to share more. So if I can request to you and our other Parks Commissioners, we did get some emails. I want to recognize all the residents that sent their feedback in and their ideas. And so I want to thank you for coming tonight. If we could get that rotation back in, where the Parks Commissioners can come in, and that's the role, is we're going to have a lot of parks issues come up when the security cameras go up. And they can help advise us and get feedback from the community. I think that's a great thing. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
My last thing is I did have the opportunity to attend the Memorial Day drive-through salute, and I want to thank the staff who planned it and also who made the video. Was it Gabriel who edited the after video? I thought it was very respectful, beautiful, and awesome with the trumpet. And a resident came whose brother had passed away in the Vietnam War. I thought it was very touching and emotional. And I want to thank everyone that drove through, paid their respects. And I thought it was a great idea, given that we didn't know and we didn't have money and we didn't plan. We didn't know what the public health situation would be given COVID. So I want to give kudos to the staff for thinking outside the box again and holding a great event. Thank you.
Councilman Lutz?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say thank you to Parks and Rec Commissioner Jacob Rodriguez for coming and giving us updates on what's going on in the Parks and Recreation community. And one item that he did mention, and I'd like to highlight one more time as old business, is yes, Pico Rivera is talking and has been in talks with the Roldan family. You know, again, yes, they are an iconic soccer family, and they were, in fact, students of our mayor. And with that being said, the talks started with Commissioner McCachran, Adrian McCachran, and from there, we're looking to bring in mini-pitch soccer fields. And those are smaller soccer fields that are asphalt rather than grass, but you can put maybe about 2 in the space of what a normal size one, and we're looking for locations. And so that's now linked into the possible Southern California Edison sites. Perhaps we have to see if it's viable or not, or existing land that the city has. But this project is ongoing, and we'll have some great news for the community and have this project up and running sooner than later. So that's old business. Thank you.
Councilman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I do have one item in old business. I just wanted to also thank staff for the drive-through Memorial Day event that was held, and I'm hopefully looking forward to our Veterans Day event in the near future in person where we can gather, but we shall see. What I did want to use this opportunity to highlight just one old business. I know I've been talking about this Pico Rivera Summer Road Through Literacy Book Drive that was put together, and I want to just thank everyone who participated. It was an idea that came about by some of the committee members, in particular, school board member Esther Mejia, and it was an offshoot of a program that was here in the city of Pico Rivera called Generation First Degree Pico Rivera that I happen to be a board member of with both Gil and Jackie Cisneros. And one of the things that Jackie did on her own with her mom was to buy books to all the kindergarteners in the city of Pico Rivera. She did that for 5 years and continue that. So it was kind of like a continuation to that. Thank you, Esther, board member Mejia, for bringing that and bringing us together, since I had some historical background on that. But Eventually, our goal was to raise $10,000. We raised $16,000. We utilized our Rancho Unified District's relationship with Scholastic to purchase relevant books for our kindergartners in the city of Pico Rivera. I met with Dr. Esparza and Dr. Marino and school board members, Dr. Marino, Dr. Karen Castillo, and of course Esther Mejia. Again, I mentioned Dr. Esparza and many of the staff members, and we met at one of the sites to assemble 550 bags and books and put them all together. And as of yesterday, this week alone, all bags were distributed, and it was just a great partnership committee made up of Julian Valderas from the chamber, of course, the school board member Esther Mejia, as I mentioned, Marco Sapien, which is owner of Sapien's Bar and Grill, not yet to come, but the current president of the Chamber of Commerce, and John Contreras, the commissioner, Parks and Recs commissioner, and yours truly in this committee that, again, 6 weeks, come an idea, we put together a plan, execute it, and I'm just happy that this is going to move forward on a regular basis. Thank you for your time.
Just lastly, in regards to our retreat, I think it'd be beneficial if we had Mercury at least have a small session where they listen in and they understand our needs as for potential further direction on acquiring funds to meet those needs. In regards to the pitch fields, I know that was a project that was initially pitched to ERUSD School Board, and then there was turmoil there and that never went through. I think this would potentially be a good talking point for our joint school board meeting next week, because they have a lot of land that is currently being underutilized, and this would be a really good joint venture and potentially putting a pitch field there, potentially maybe at Ruben Salazar. They already play soccer there on their field. We wouldn't be taking the land from them, but it would be. Anyway, I just want to report that I attended the Southwest Water Coalition meeting. We discussed nothing major, nothing new in terms of things that we haven't discussed as a council already, items regarding to WRD and Central Basin. And that's basically about it. Thank you.
Was there a discussion that our economic development about the census,
Thank you. I spoke with Commander Ortiz, and he wanted to make sure that not only I understood, but folks in the community, mayor and city council as well, that they did not want to have it be understood or misunderstood. They want the city to control the census of veterans. They actually provided me and developed a decent, a very well done, a very decent first draft. And so we're going to be working with them on making sure that the questions are appropriate, trying to see how we can work with Efren Lee and Roberto from Parks and Rec to reach out to as many veterans as possible, and that the city would collect and maintain any data that is gathered during the census.
so let's be clear, we get the information and it's our.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And I guess just one last thing, we still need some veterans from you. I think we got we got you and we got, okay.
Mayor, I think we need to further clarify the committee. One questions that the veterans are asking is, what is the time commitment, length of time, monthly, weekly? Are they meeting Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that type of thing, before they commit to any agreements? So if we could flesh that out, and I think it'll be easier to find veterans.
Fine, okay.
Mayor, if I may, just one point on the veterans. I know at the event that we were at, the memorials, it was pointed out to us that our flags that we have hanging there need to be replaced. Can we look at that and see the feasibility on that, so we can replace some of the original ones? So they've been there for a couple of years plus now. So,
Councilmember, that was noted and that has been directed to replace those flags. One other thing, just really quick on my side, I'm sorry, I apologize. We are right now drafting the agenda. I'm going to circulate that. This is with the joint school district meetings to have input from council to see what items you'd like to have on there. So that will be coming shortly. That's all.
Meeting adjourned.